For 20 years, my son ignored me completely, treated me like garbage, didn't even show up to his own mother's funeral. Then he learned I quietly built a fortune of $12 million. Suddenly, he invited me to Christmas dinner, acting all caring and sorry. I showed up, smiled, and said, I brought a special gift for the whole family. He had no idea this one gift would destroy his life in a single evening. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Ronald Peterson. I'm 68 years old, living in Charlotte, North Carolina. Spent 45 years as a mechanic and inventor before retiring. Always believed blood runs thicker than water. Turns out money runs thicker than both. I'm sitting in my house on Oakwood Drive right now, staring at a photograph from 19 years ago. My son Jason's wedding day. He's grinning in that tuxedo, arm around his new bride, Danielle. I'm standing beside them, proud as any father could be. The photos gathering dust on the mantel, just like our relationship. Jason wasn't always like this. When he was 7, he'd wait by the window every evening, watching for my truck. The second I pulled into the driveway, he'd burst through the front door, running full speed into my arms. Dad! Dad! I built a race car with my Legos! Those memories feel like they belong to someone else's life now. The change started slowly after the wedding. Danielle's beautiful, I'll give her that. Dark hair, bright smile, the kind of woman who lights up a room when she wants to. But I saw something else in her eyes during the reception. The way she looked at our modest house when they visited. The slight curl of her lip when I mentioned my mechanic's pension. She came from money, old Charlotte money, and she made sure everyone knew it. The calls became less frequent after they got married. Weekly turned to monthly. Monthly turned to holidays only. Then just text messages. Happy Thanksgiving, Dad. Merry Christmas. Generic. Distant. The kind of messages you'd send to a coworker you barely know. I tried. Called Jason on his birthday every year. Got voicemail. Left messages about wanting to see him. Maybe grab lunch. Nothing. Sent gifts to their new house in Matthews, that fancy subdivision where the lawns look like golf courses. Never got so much as a thank you text. My wife Martha noticed it too. We'd sit at the dinner table, just the two of us, and she'd say, maybe they're just busy, Ron. Young couples have their own lives. But I could see the hurt in her eyes. She missed her son, missed the grandchildren we'd never have, because Jason and Danielle were too focused on their careers to think about kids. The silence grew louder over the years. Birthdays came and went. Anniversaries. Christmas became just another day. Martha would set out an extra place at the table every holiday, hoping this would be the year Jason showed up. The empty chair mocked us. Then came the spring that changed everything. Martha had been feeling weak, tired. The doctors found it too late. Lung cancer, stage 4. She'd never smoked a day in her life, but cancer doesn't care about fairness. I called Jason the day we got the diagnosis. Left a message. Son, it's your mother. She's sick. It's serious. Please call back. Nothing. 3 days later, I called again. Jason, she's asking for you. Straight to voicemail. Martha lasted 6 weeks. She kept asking about him until the morphine made her forget. Is Jason coming today? She'd whisper from the hospital bed. I'd lie and say he was stuck at work, that he'd be here soon. Easier than telling her the truth. Our son couldn't be bothered to visit his dying mother. The funeral was small. Martha's sister came from Virginia. A few neighbors. The guy who ran the chess club where I played on Thursdays. I kept checking my phone, thinking maybe Jason would show up at the last minute. Maybe he'd surprise us. He didn't come. 2 days after the funeral, a delivery van pulled up. The driver handed me a massive flower arrangement. White lilies and roses probably cost $300. The card read, with deepest sympathies, Jason and Danielle Peterson. I stood there holding that card for a long time. My wife of 42 years was gone, and my only child sent flowers like I was some distant acquaintance. Couldn't even pick up the phone. Couldn't take one day off work to say goodbye to the woman who gave him life. That night, I sat in this same chair, in this same empty house, and something inside me broke. Not my heart. That had broken weeks ago, watching Martha slip away. No, this was different. This was the part of me that still hoped, still believed Jason might remember he had a father. I looked around the living room, the Afghan Martha knitted draped over the couch, her reading glasses on the side table, the silence so thick I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. For the first time in my life, I was completely alone, and I realized something. I'd spent 68 years living for other people. For Martha, bless her soul. For Jason, who didn't want me in his life. For a family that no longer existed. I picked up that sympathy card, read it one more time, then tore it in half, then in quarters, then into pieces so small they looked like confetti, let them scatter across the floor. The next morning I made myself breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee, sat at the kitchen table and made a decision. I was going to keep living, not for Jason, not waiting by the phone for a call that would never come, not hoping for a relationship that died years ago. I was going to live for myself. Whatever that meant, I'd figure it out. But one thing was certain. I was done being invisible. The thing about being a mechanic for 45 years is you learn to see how things work. Not just engines and transmissions, but systems, patterns. I spent most of my career at Anderson Automotive in downtown Charlotte, fixing everything from Ford pickups to luxury sedans. But nights and weekends, I had my real passion, inventing. My workshop in the garage was my sanctuary. Martha used to joke that I loved that space more than our bedroom. She wasn't entirely wrong. While other guys watched football or played golf, I was sketching designs, filing patent applications, tinkering with prototypes. Over the years, I developed 12 patents, improvements to automatic transmission systems, innovations in brake calibration, small things that made big differences in vehicle performance and safety. I'd submit them to the patent office, get them registered, then file them away. Always told myself I'd sell them someday, use the money to take Martha on that trip to Italy she always wanted, maybe help Jason with a down payment on a house. But I never sold them. The patents just sat there in a filing cabinet, gathering dust alongside my dreams of being the kind of father Jason would be proud of. After Martha's funeral, I couldn't stay in the house. Too many memories, too much silence. I started spending 14-hour days in the garage, restoring antique clocks I'd collected from estate sales. There's something meditative about taking apart a mechanism that's 100 years old, cleaning each tiny gear, putting it back together, and hearing it tick again, bringing dead things back to life. One night in early June, I was working on an 1890s mantel clock when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Peterson, this is David Coleman from the Charlotte Business Chronicle. I'm writing a piece about local inventors and patent holders. Your name came up in some recent patent office filings. Would you be willing to talk about your work? I should have said no. Should have told him I was retired, not interested in publicity. But Martha always said I was too polite for my own good. We talked for 20 minutes. I explained my patents, kept it technical. Didn't think much of it afterward, just another conversation to fill the empty hours. Then I had an idea, a dangerous idea, the kind that takes root in your mind and won't let go. Those 12 patents, they were good, better than good. I had seen lesser innovations sell for serious money. What if I actually sold them? Not for Jason anymore, not for some future that would never come. For me, for the freedom to do whatever I wanted with whatever time I had left. I spent the next week making calls. Found a patent attorney in Raleigh who specialized in automotive technology. His name was Gerald Martinez, and he knew his business. We met at a coffee shop in South Charlotte. I brought my files. He looked through them, and I watched his eyes get wider with each page. Mr. Peterson, do you realize what you have here? Any one of these could be worth $500,000. Together, we're talking millions. Then let's talk millions, I said. Gerald worked fast. Within 3 weeks, he had interest from Ford, General Motors, and Toyota. All three wanted different patents. All three were willing to pay. The negotiations took another month, back and forth on price, licensing terms, implementation rights. I let Gerald handle most of it. I just showed up to sign papers and shake hands with executives in expensive suits who looked at me like I was someone important. The final numbers came through in late June. Ford, $4,200,000. General Motors, $5,100,000. Toyota, $2,850,000. Total, $12,150,000. I sat in Gerald's office staring at that number on the contract. More money than I'd made in my entire life. More money than I'd imagined having. After taxes, I'd clear $8,910,000. You okay, Mr. Peterson? Gerald asked. I thought about Jason, about 20 years of silence, about Martha's empty chair at every holiday, about flowers sent in place of presents. I'm perfect, I said, and signed the papers. The money hit my new bank account 3 weeks later. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't change anything about my life. Same house on Oakwood Drive. Same 2008 Toyota Camry with 170,000 miles. Same routine. Morning coffee, afternoon in the garage, evening chess games online. But something had shifted inside me. For the first time since Martha died, I felt something other than grief. Not happiness exactly. More like possibility. Like I'd been holding my breath for decades and finally remembered how to exhale. I started playing chess more seriously. Joined an online club. Worked my rating up to 1850. Started reading again. Books I'd been meaning to get to for years. Took long drives through the Blue Ridge Mountains. Just me and the road. And I didn't call Jason. Didn't send updates or try to bridge the gap. If he wanted to know how I was doing, he knew where to find me. The phone worked both ways. It always had. For the first time in my adult life, I was living for myself. No expectations, no disappointments. Just me, my garage full of antique clocks, and enough money to do whatever I wanted. It felt like freedom. It felt like justice. It felt like the beginning of something I couldn't quite name yet. But I would. Soon enough, I would. The article appeared in mid-September. I didn't even know about it until someone at the chess club mentioned it during our Thursday session. Hey, Ron, I didn't know you were some big-shot inventor. Saw your name in the Business Chronicle. I played it cool, moved my knight. Just sold some old paperwork, nothing special. But curiosity got the better of me. I stopped by the library on the way home, found the article on page 4 of the business section. Modest South Charlotte retiree sells patent portfolio for $12+ million, the headline read. David Coleman had quoted me directly, mentioned my address by neighborhood, even included a photo he must have pulled from the patent filings. I folded the paper and drove home. Didn't think much of it. Who reads business sections anyway? Turned out, more people than I thought. A week later, my phone rang. The number looked familiar, but I couldn't place it at first. Then I saw the name, Jason Peterson. I stared at that screen for 3 rings before answering. 8 months. 8 months since Martha's funeral. 8 months of silence. And now this. Hello? Dad! Hey, how are you? His voice was warm, enthusiastic, like we talked every day, like he hadn't missed his own mother's funeral. I'm alive, I said. That's great. Listen, I'm so sorry I haven't called. Work has been absolutely insane. Danielle and I have been worried about you. You know, after Mom. Worried. Right. So worried they sent flowers instead of showing up. What do you want, Jason? A pause. I don't want anything. We miss you. We were thinking maybe we could get together for dinner. Catch up? I sat down in my chair, the same one where I'd torn up their sympathy card months ago. Catch up, after 8 months. I know. I've been a terrible son, but I want to fix that. Please, Dad, let me take you to dinner. Every word sounded rehearsed, like he'd practiced this conversation in front of a mirror. Or more likely, Danielle had written him a script. I'm busy, I said. Oh, well, what about next week, or the week after? Anytime that works for you. Busy then, too. Another pause. I could almost hear him scrambling. Dad, if this is about Mom's funeral, I understand you're upset, but... Good night, Jason. I hung up, sat there in the silence, phone in my hand. My heart was pounding, not from anger exactly, but from something else. Anticipation, maybe. Because now I knew. They'd read the article. They knew about the money. And suddenly, after 20 years of treating me like an inconvenience, they were worried about me. I smiled. First real smile I'd had in months. So that's how it is. The calls didn't stop. Over the next few weeks, Jason tried again and again. Sometimes I answered, sometimes I didn't. When I did pick up, the conversations were always the same. Him trying to sound concerned, me giving one-word answers, him eventually hanging up, frustrated. Danielle started texting, long messages about how they'd been doing some soul-searching and realized how much they'd neglected our relationship, how she felt terrible about everything, how they wanted to make amends. I deleted them without responding. Then came the voicemails, Jason's voice getting more desperate each time. Dad, please, just one dinner. That's all I'm asking. What I found fascinating was watching the progression. At first, it was all apologies and emotional appeals. We miss you. We were wrong. Family's important. But after a few weeks, the tone shifted. More direct, more transactional. We really need to talk about some things. There are matters we should discuss. It's important that we connect. Matters. Things. Important. They were getting impatient. I started keeping a log. Every call, every text, every voicemail, documented them all in a notebook I kept in my desk drawer. Not sure why. Maybe I just wanted to see the pattern laid out in front of me. Proof that I wasn't imagining this sudden change in behavior. One evening in early October, I was in the garage working on a 1920s grandfather clock when my phone buzzed. Another text from Danielle. This one was longer than usual. Dear Ron, I know we haven't been close. I know you have every right to be angry with us, but life is too short for regrets. We lost Martha, and I can't bear the thought of losing you too without making things right. Please, give us one chance. Just one evening. Let us show you we've changed. Love, Danielle. I read it 3 times. The words were perfect, carefully crafted. Exactly what a grieving son and his caring wife should say. But I kept thinking about that curl of her lip at the wedding reception, the way she'd steered Jason away from that side of town where I lived, the complete silence when Martha was dying. Changed. Sure they had. Right around the time they found out I had $8 million. I went back to the clock, adjusted a tiny spring, listened to the mechanism tick back to life. People think these old clocks are fragile, but they're not. They're precise. Every gear matters. Every movement has a purpose. Remove one piece and the whole thing stops working. Something was forming in my mind. Not a complete thought yet, just the seed of an idea. But it was growing. 3 days later, an envelope arrived in the mail. Thick, expensive paper. Inside was a formal invitation, printed on cream-colored cardstock with gold-embossed lettering. You are cordially invited to join Jason and Danielle Peterson for a Christmas dinner celebration at the Capitol Grill, December 25th, 7 p.m. We have missed you terribly and hope you will grace us with your presence for this special evening. I turned the card over in my hands. The Capitol Grill, most expensive restaurant in Charlotte. Steaks start at $60. The kind of place where they pronounce the wine list with a French accent. They were pulling out all the stops. I sat down at my kitchen table and thought about it. Really thought about it. What did they want from me? Money, obviously. But what was their plan? Show up, be charming, get back in my good graces, then what? Wait for me to die and inherit everything? The idea that had been forming started to take shape, became clearer, more defined. What if I gave them exactly what they wanted? Or at least made them think I was giving it to them? I picked up my phone and did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I called Jason back. He answered on the first ring. Dad, I got your invitation, I said. Oh, that's wonderful. Does this mean you'll come? I let him wait a beat. I'll be there. The relief in his voice was almost convincing. That's amazing. You won't regret this, Dad. We're going to have such a great time. Danielle is so excited. We both are. I'm sure you are, I said. I'll bring a gift. Something special for both of you. You don't have to do that. I insist. See you on Christmas. I hung up before he could respond. Sat there feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not quite anger, not quite satisfaction. Something colder, more focused. They wanted to play Happy Family? Fine. I'd play along. But this was going to be my game, my rules, and they wouldn't even know it until it was too late. The next morning, I drove downtown to an office building on Trade Street, 3rd floor. A brass plaque beside the door read, Leonard Morris, Notary Public and Estate Planning. I'd looked him up the night before. 71 years old, in practice for over 40 years, reputation for discretion and ironclad legal work, no connection to my family whatsoever. Perfect. His office was neat, organized, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with legal volumes. Leonard himself was tall, thin, wearing reading glasses on a chain around his neck. "Mr. Peterson," he said, shaking my hand, "what can I do for you?" I sat down across from his desk. "I need 2 wills prepared." His eyebrows raised slightly. "2? One real, one decorative." Now I had his full attention. Leonard leaned back in his chair, studying me. "I'm going to need you to explain that." So I did. Told him about Jason, about 20 years of silence, about Martha's funeral, about the sudden rekindling of interest right after the patent sale became public. "I see," Leonard said when I finished. "And what exactly do you want the decorative will to say?" "I want it to look legitimate, official, but it won't be filed anywhere. It's just bait." "Bait for what?" I smiled. "To see how low they'll go?" Leonard was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out a legal pad. "Tell me what you're thinking." We spent 3 hours working through the details. The real will was straightforward. Everything I owned would go to a charitable foundation that helped isolated seniors. The house, the money, all of it. Not a penny to Jason. The fake will was more interesting. It would leave $11 million to Jason, conditional on him providing appropriate care and attention to me in my remaining years. If the conditions weren't met, everything went to charity instead. "This won't hold up in court," Leonard warned. "It's not notarized properly. Anyone who looks at it carefully will know it's fake." "They won't look carefully," I said. "They'll see what they want to see." He studied me for another moment, then nodded. "When do you need these?" "Real one today. Fake one by the end of next week." We shook hands. I paid him $1,200 in cash, walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in months. Over the next few weeks, I laid more groundwork. Opened a new safe in my study, one of those fireproof models you can buy at any office supply store. Set the combination to Martha's birthday, August 14th, 52. Jason would remember that date. I'd made sure to mention it every birthday for years, back when I still thought he cared. I also started making small changes around the house, cleaning out closets, organizing papers, the kind of things people do when they're getting their affairs in order. Not obvious enough to be suspicious, but noticeable if someone was paying attention. And I knew they would be paying attention now. The real preparation, though, was mental. Every time I thought about seeing Jason and Danielle at Christmas, I had to remind myself, this was theater. I needed to play my role perfectly. Not too eager, not too hostile. Just a lonely old man who maybe, possibly, could be convinced to forgive and forget. I practiced in front of the bathroom mirror, tried on different expressions. Sad but hopeful, hurt but willing to try, weak but not broken. Martha used to say I couldn't lie to save my life. My face gave everything away. But Martha wasn't here anymore, and I was learning new skills. 2 weeks before Christmas, I went to a photography studio in South Park and bought a gift certificate. $450 for a premium family portrait session. Wrapped it in expensive paper with a silver bow. That would be their Christmas present. Not money, not promises. Just a piece of paper that suggested maybe, just maybe, I was willing to play the role of grandfather to the children they'd never have. Let them be disappointed. Let them wonder what they had to do to get what they really wanted. The afternoon before Christmas, I put the fake will in the safe. Left it just visible enough that someone snooping would find it without too much effort. Placed some other documents on top, insurance policies, property deeds, bank statements from my old account that showed a balance of $42,000. Not the real money. That was hidden in accounts they didn't know existed. I stepped back and looked at the setup. It was perfect. A trail of breadcrumbs leading exactly where I wanted them to go. That night, I sat in my workshop with a glass of whiskey and the antique clock I'd been restoring for months. It was almost complete. Just a few final adjustments. I worked slowly, carefully, taking my time with each tiny gear. There's a moment with these old clocks where everything comes together. When you've cleaned every part, aligned every mechanism, and you give the pendulum that first gentle push. The moment when you don't know if it will work or if you've missed something crucial. I set the pendulum swinging. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Perfect. I raised my glass to the clock. To timing, I said. To precision. To watching the pieces fall exactly where they're supposed to. Tomorrow was Christmas. Tomorrow, Jason and Danielle would play their parts. They'd smile and hug and pretend to care. They'd ask about my health and my life and wait for the right moment to bring up the money. And I would smile back. I would accept their performance. I would even give them a gift. But the real gift? The one they'd find later when they thought I wasn't watching. That was going to be the most expensive lesson of their lives. I finished my whiskey, turned off the workshop lights, and went to bed. In the morning, I had a family dinner to attend and a special present to deliver. Christmas Day arrived cold and clear. I spent the morning in my usual routine. Coffee, toast, read the newspaper cover to cover, worked on a small mantel clock in the garage for an hour. Normal, calm, like any other day. But around 6 o'clock, I put on my best clothes. Navy slacks, white button-down, the sport coat Martha bought me 3 Christmases ago. Still fit perfectly. I looked at myself in the mirror and practiced one more time. Pleasant smile, not too eager. Just a tired old man giving his family another chance. I grabbed the wrapped gift certificate from the kitchen counter and headed out to my Camry. The engine started with its usual rough cough. 173,000 miles now. I could have bought a new car. Could have bought 10 new cars. But that wasn't the point. The drive to uptown Charlotte took 20 minutes. I parked in the lot behind the Capitol Grill on North Tryon Street, took a breath, and walked inside. The restaurant was all dark wood and leather, dim lighting, waiters in black ties. The kind of place that charges $18 for a side of mashed potatoes. A hostess in a black dress greeted me with a practiced smile. "Reservation for Peterson," I said. "Of course, Mr. Peterson. Right this way." She led me through the main dining room. And there they were, at a corner table. Jason stood up immediately, nearly knocking over his water glass. Danielle rose more gracefully, her smile bright enough to light the room. "Dad!" Jason's voice was loud, enthusiastic. He came around the table and wrapped me in a hug. First time he'd hugged me in, I couldn't even remember. His cologne was expensive. His suit probably cost more than my monthly pension used to be. "So good to see you," he said, pulling back. His eyes were searching my face, looking for something. Forgiveness. Weakness. Danielle stepped forward next. "Ron!" She kissed my cheek. Her perfume was overwhelming. "You look wonderful. Thank you so much for coming." First time she'd kissed me since their wedding. 20 years ago. "Merry Christmas," I said simply. We sat. A waiter appeared instantly like he'd been watching from the shadows. Jason ordered wine without asking what I wanted. Some French name I didn't catch. Probably cost more than my weekly grocery bill. "So, Dad," Jason said once the waiter left, "how have you been? We've been so worried about you, all alone in that house." "I'm fine," I said. "Are you eating properly? Getting enough exercise?" Danielle leaned forward, her face arranged in concerned lines. "We just want to make sure you're taking care of yourself." I looked at her, really looked at her. The designer dress, the diamond earrings that caught the light, the manicured nails. Everything about her screamed money. Old money, new money, any money she could get her hands on. "I manage," I said. The wine arrived. Jason made a show of tasting it, nodding approval. The waiter poured for all of us. I took a sip. It tasted like wine. Expensive wine, probably, but still just wine. "We should order," Danielle said, opening her menu. "The filet mignon here is incredible." "Get whatever you want, Dad," Jason added quickly. "This is our treat. Our way of saying thank you for coming." I ordered a steak, medium rare. They both ordered the most expensive items on the menu. The waiter left again, and then came the awkward part. The part where they had to actually talk to me like I was a person they cared about. Jason started with work. Talked about his dealership, about sales numbers, about difficult customers. I nodded occasionally. Danielle chimed in with stories about her hotel, about difficult guests, about a recent promotion she'd received. I let them talk, watched them perform. Every few minutes, one of them would try to draw me in. "What do you think, Dad?" Or, "Have you been working on any new inventions?" I gave short answers. Yes, no, not really. Watched them get increasingly nervous as the dinner progressed. Our food arrived. The steak was good. I'll give them that. They'd chosen well. The meal probably cost $340 total. I made a mental note to remember that number. We were halfway through dessert when Jason finally got to the point. "Dad," he said, setting down his fork. His hands were shaking slightly, nervous. "We heard, well, the article in the Business Chronicle mentioned that you sold your patents." There it was. I took another bite of chocolate cake. Chewed slowly, swallowed. "That's right. That's amazing. I always knew your inventions were valuable. Why didn't you tell us? We could have helped, could have celebrated with you." I set down my own fork, looked him in the eye. "Why would I tell you, Jason? You haven't called in 8 months. Not since your mother died." The table went quiet. Even the ambient noise of the restaurant seemed to fade. Jason's face went pale. "Dad, You sent flowers," I continued, my voice level. "A nice arrangement. $300 probably, but you didn't come. Didn't call. Didn't even send a text asking how I was doing." Danielle jumped in, smooth as silk. "Ron, we understand you're angry. You have every right to be. But sometimes life gets so complicated, and we make mistakes we regret." She reached across the table, put her hand on mine. Her skin was cold. "We want to make this right," she said. "We want to be a family again. Real family. We know we've failed you, but we're asking for another chance." I looked at her hand on mine, then at Jason's pleading expression. They were good. I had to give them that. If I didn't know better, I might have believed them. "Family," I said softly. "Interesting word." I pulled my hand back slowly, reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the wrapped present. "I brought you something," I said. "Merry Christmas." I watched their faces, the flash of hope, the gleam in Danielle's eyes. This was it, they were thinking. The gesture, the peace offering, maybe a check, maybe a promise. Jason took the package with trembling hands. "You didn't have to—" "Open it," I said. He tore the paper carefully. Danielle leaned in close. They pulled out the certificate together. "Premium Family Portrait Session," Jason read aloud. His voice was flat. "At Classic Memories Photography Studio." The disappointment on their faces was exquisite. Danielle recovered first, her smile snapping back into place like a mask. "How thoughtful," she said, but her voice was tight. "A family photo. That's lovely." Jason was still staring at the certificate. $450. Not nothing, but not what they'd hoped for. Not even close. "I thought," I said quietly, "that since we're trying to rebuild our relationship, we should have something to remember it by. A photo. The three of us. What family is supposed to look like." "That's a wonderful idea, Dad." Jason's words were automatic. His eyes were still fixed on the certificate, like it might transform into something else if he stared long enough. I stood up. "Thank you for dinner. It was delicious." "Wait, you're leaving?" Danielle stood too. "We were hoping to talk more." "Maybe you could come back to our place for coffee?" "It's late," I said. "I should get home. But this was nice. We should do it again sometime." The relief and frustration warred on their faces. Relief that I'd said yes to doing this again. Frustration that they hadn't gotten what they wanted yet. "Absolutely," Jason said, standing. Another awkward hug. "We'll call you next week. Maybe you could come over for dinner. See the house." "Maybe," I said. I walked out of that restaurant with my shoulders straight. Didn't look back. Got in my Camry and drove home through empty Christmas streets. When I got inside, I went straight to my study. Pulled out my notebook. Made a note. Christmas dinner. $340. Gift certificate given. Disappointed but still hopeful. They'll call within a week. Then I sat back in my chair and smiled. The bait was set. The safe was ready. Now all I had to do was wait for them to take it. The call came 6 days later. "Dad, it's Jason. How are you doing?" I was in the garage, adjusting the escapement on a 1910 wall clock. "Fine. You?" "Great, great. Listen, Danielle and I were talking, and we'd really love to have you over for dinner. Nothing fancy, just a casual meal at our place. Would you be free this Saturday?" Saturday. 3 days away. They weren't wasting time. "I suppose I could make that work," I said. Perfect. Come around 6. We'll give you the grand tour, show you what we've done with the house. What they'd done with the house they could barely afford. The house with the massive mortgage. The house in Matthews with the golf course lawns. I'll be there, I said. The intervening days crawled by. I spent the time preparing. Got the fake will from Leonard Morris. Studied it carefully. It looked perfect. Official letterhead. Legal language. My signature. And a notary stamp that looked legitimate unless you examined it very closely. Which they wouldn't. The document was dated the 5th of January. Recent enough to be relevant. It specified $11 million to Jason, conditional on him providing care and attention to me. If the conditions weren't met, everything went to the Senior Citizens Support Foundation. I put it in the safe, underneath some property deeds and insurance policies, visible but not obviously planted, like something I'd filed away and forgot about. Saturday evening arrived. I drove to Matthews, followed Jason's texted directions to a subdivision called Huntington Ridge. The houses were massive, colonial style, perfect lawns, German cars in the driveways. Jason and Danielle's house was near the back, 2-story brick facade, attached garage, probably worth $450,000, probably mortgaged for most of that. Jason opened the door before I could knock. "Dad, come in, come in!" The interior was exactly what I expected. Hardwood floors, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances. Everything looked expensive but generic, like they'd hired a decorator who specialized in upwardly mobile professional. "Let me show you around," Jason said. We toured every room, the formal living room they never used, the dining room with the table that could seat 12, the kitchen with appliances that probably cost more than my entire garage workshop, the master bedroom with its walk-in closet bigger than my study. Danielle narrated the whole thing. We had this custom built. These tiles are imported from Italy. The chandelier is hand-blown glass. Every sentence was about money, about status, about having things that proved they'd made it. "It's very nice," I said after the tour ended. We were back in the kitchen. "But it must be expensive to maintain." A flash of something crossed Danielle's face. Irritation? Worry? "We manage," she said. Dinner was salmon and asparagus, prepared by Danielle. It was good. We sat at that massive dining table. The 3 of us clustered at one end, the rest of the table empty and echoing. "Dad," Jason said halfway through the meal. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask." Are you okay? Financially, I mean. After the patent's sold, are you set up all right? Do you need any help with managing it?" There it was, the real question. Are you competent? Do you need help? Translation. Can we get our hands on it? "I'm fine," I said. "I've set everything up the way I want it." That's good, that's good. Jason nodded too enthusiastically. "It's just, at your age, financial planning can be complicated. Estate taxes, trusts, all that legal stuff. If you ever need advice." "I've seen an attorney," I said. "Everything's taken care of." Danielle leaned forward. "A local attorney? We know some excellent estate lawyers if you need a second opinion." "Leonard Morris on Trade Street," I said, watching their faces. "Very thorough, very professional." They exchanged a glance, fast, but I caught it. They were making mental notes. Leonard Morris. Trade Street. They'd probably look him up before the week was out. After dinner, Jason suggested coffee. "Why don't we have it in the study? I'll show you my office." The study was on the first floor, down a hallway. More expensive furniture, more showing off. But I played along, admired his desk, his bookshelf. "Listen, I need to run to the restroom," I said. "Where is it?" "Just down the hall, second door on the left," Jason said. I walked out, counted to 20 in the hallway, then walked back toward the study, my footsteps deliberate and heavy. I stopped just outside the door, stayed quiet. "Think he's got it all set up already?" Danielle's voice, low and urgent. "He said he did, with some notary named Morris." Jason's response. "We need to find out what's in that will. If he's leaving everything to some charity, he wouldn't. We're his only family. Jason, we haven't been family to him in 20 years. If he's got any sense, he's leaving us nothing." A pause. Then Jason, quieter. "So what do we do?" "We need to see that will. We need to know what we're dealing with." I cleared my throat loudly and walked through the door. They jumped apart like teenagers caught sneaking out. Sorry, I said. Couldn't find the bathroom. Got turned around. Oh, it's down the other hallway, Danielle said, her smile back in place. Perfect. Seamless. Easy to get confused. The house layout is a bit maze-like. I found the actual bathroom, waited an appropriate amount of time, then returned. We had coffee, made small talk, and then I played my card. You know, I said casually, I should probably show you where I keep important documents. Just in case something happens to me, at my age you never know. Their eyes lit up, tried to hide it, but I saw it. That's very thoughtful, Dad, Jason said. Very responsible. I keep everything in a safe in my study, I continued. The combination is your mother's birthday, August 14th, 52. You remember that, don't you, Jason? Of course I do, he said quickly. Good. It's a fireproof safe, left side of my desk. All my important papers are there. Will, insurance, property deeds, everything. I sipped my coffee. I just figure you should know, in case of emergency. We really appreciate that, Ron, Danielle said. Her voice was warm syrup. It means a lot that you trust us with that information. I stood up. I should head home. It's getting late. They walked me to the door. More hugs. Promises to get together again soon. I drove home with my hands steady on the wheel. When I got back to Oakwood Drive, I sat in my study for a long time. Looked at the safe. The documents inside. The fake will that would soon be discovered. I'd given them the combination. Told them exactly where to look. Made it seem like natural, trusting sharing. Within a week, maybe 2, they'd find a reason to visit. Maybe bring groceries. Maybe suggest helping me organize my paperwork. Some excuse to get me out of the study for 15 minutes. And they'd open that safe. They'd find the will. $11 million, all theirs, if they just took care of me. I poured myself a whiskey, sat back in my chair. Your move, I said to the empty room. The trap was set. All I had to do now was wait for them to walk right into it. They took the bait faster than I expected. 3 days after the dinner at their house, Jason called. Hey, Dad, Danielle and I were thinking we should check in on you more often. You know, make sure you're eating right, taking your medications. I wasn't on any medications, but I didn't correct him. That's thoughtful, I said. Great. We'll swing by tomorrow with some groceries. Maybe cook you dinner. And so it began. The performance of a lifetime. Over the next few weeks, they transformed into the most devoted son and daughter-in-law you could imagine. Phone calls every morning. Just checking in, Dad. Visits 3 times a week, sometimes more. They'd arrive with grocery bags from Whole Foods. Expensive organic produce I'd never buy for myself. Danielle would cook elaborate meals while Jason sat with me in the living room, trying to make conversation about the weather, about sports, about nothing that mattered. She'd serve dinner on my own plates, smile sweetly, and ask about my day like she genuinely cared. I played along, grateful but not effusive. An old man appreciating the attention but not quite trusting it yet. What they didn't know was that I'd spent $890 on Amazon. 5 miniature HD cameras, each about the size of a thumb drive. I'd installed them while they were busy with their Christmas preparations. One in the living room, hidden in a bookshelf. One in the kitchen, tucked behind the coffee maker. One in my study, mounted in the smoke detector. 2 more in strategic locations. Every visit, I recorded everything. I'd wait until they left, then sit in my study with a glass of whiskey and watch. It was better than any television show I'd ever seen. The first few weeks, they were careful. All smiles and concern when they thought I was watching. But gradually they got comfortable. Started having whispered conversations when they assumed I was in another room. The kitchen camera caught the best moments. They seemed to forget it was my house, my space. Thought that if I wasn't physically present, I couldn't hear them. One evening in late February, I excused myself to use the bathroom upstairs. Took my time, made sure they heard the floor creaking above them. The kitchen camera was rolling. Danielle's voice came through crystal clear on the playback later that night. I still can't believe he just told us the combination, like he's completely senile. Jason, nervous, as always. He's not senile. He's just trusting. Same thing at his age. A pause. Did you see the will? I looked. $11 million, Danielle. $11 million if we just keep this up. How long do you think we have to maintain this charade? Jason's response was quieter. He's 68. Could be 10 years, could be 2. The will said we have to provide care until, you know, until he dies. Danielle's voice was matter of fact. Well, we can do this. It's not that hard. 3 visits a week, some phone calls. Small price to pay for $11 million. I saved that recording, labeled it carefully in my growing archive. By March, their routine was well established. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, visits like clockwork. Danielle would arrive with groceries, Jason with questions about my health. They'd ask about my doctor appointments, my sleep, my appetite. Dad, are you sure you're taking your vitamins? Jason would ask. I'm fine, I'd say. It's just, at your age, you need to be careful. At my age, they said it constantly, like 68 was 1 foot in the grave, like I was barely competent to dress myself. I started playing into it, moving a little slower when they were around, forgetting small things, then correcting myself. Oh, right, that was yesterday, not last week. Nothing too dramatic, just enough to make them think I was declining. Their confidence grew with every supposed sign of weakness. One evening in mid-March, I was upstairs in my bedroom. They thought I was asleep. I'd made a show of being tired, saying I needed to lie down. They'd tucked me in like I was a child, pulled the curtains, closed the door gently. Then they'd gone downstairs and talked. The kitchen camera caught it all. Danielle poured herself a glass of my wine. Jason leaned against the counter. How much longer do you think? She asked. Danielle, I'm serious. He's slowing down. Did you see how he struggled with the stairs today? That was one time. He forgot what day it was yesterday. Called me Martha. I hadn't, but I'd made it seem that way. Calculated confusion. Maybe we should suggest he move in with us, Danielle continued. We could keep a closer eye on him, make sure he doesn't hurt himself. Jason hesitated. He won't go for it. He's attached to this house. Then we need to be patient. The will is clear. $11 million, Jason, as long as we're providing appropriate care and attention, she smiled, and we're providing plenty of both. The recording was damning, but I kept watching, kept collecting evidence. They visited 87 times over the next 4 months. I counted every single one, kept a log with dates, times, what they brought, what they said. Not once in the previous 20 years had they visited. Not once. But now, with $11 million on the line, they couldn't stay away. I watched them perform, watched Danielle's fake concern, watched Jason's forced conversation, watched them count down my remaining years like I was an investment about to mature. And every night, I added to my collection. Video clips, audio recordings, their own words condemning them. One video in particular became my favorite. Late March, they thought I was napping upstairs. Danielle was in the kitchen, Jason in the living room. She called to him. Did you see the will says he's leaving the house too? Yeah, $385,000, he said it's worth. That's almost $12 million total. Her voice got dreamy. We could pay off our mortgage, buy a beach house, finally live the way we're supposed to. Jason appeared in the camera frame. We just have to wait. How much longer, though? He's 68. That could be another 15, 20 years. The average life expectancy is 78, so probably 10 years, max. Danielle frowned. 10 years is a long time. It'll be worth it. I know, she sighed. Sometimes I forget we're acting, like I have to remind myself this isn't real. After all we're doing for him? Jason's voice took on an edge. We earn that money, Danielle. This is fair. I saved that video, labeled it fair. Spring turned to early summer. Their patience was starting to fray. The visits continued, but I could see the cracks forming. Danielle's smile not quite reaching her eyes. Jason's conversations getting shorter, more perfunctory. The camera captured it all. Their frustration, their calculations, their greed laid bare in my own kitchen. I had everything I needed. Hours of footage, dozens of recordings, proof of their manipulation, their mercenary motives, their complete disregard for me as a human being. But I wasn't ready to spring the trap yet. Let them work a little harder. Let them believe they were winning. Every visit, I played the grateful father. Every phone call, the lonely old man appreciating the attention. And every night, I sat in my study, reviewed the footage, and planned the final act. The shift came in early June. Danielle arrived alone one afternoon, which was unusual. She had a determined look on her face that I recognized. This wasn't a grocery run. "Ron, we need to talk," she said, settling onto my couch without waiting for an invitation. "About what?" "About your future. Jason and I have been thinking, and we're worried about you living here alone. What if you fall? What if something happens and no one's around?" "I'm fine," I said. "You're 68 years old. You need to start thinking practically." She leaned forward, her voice taking on that sugary quality I'd come to despise. "We think you should consider signing the house over to Jason, for simplicity. That way, if anything happens, we don't have to worry about probate or taxes." There it was. The real ask. Not just waiting for me to die, but trying to accelerate their access to my assets. "My house stays in my name as long as I'm alive," I said, my voice flat. Her smile tightened. "I understand you're attached to it. But from a legal standpoint, I understand the legal standpoint just fine, and my answer is no." I watched her jaw clench, watched her recalibrate, pulling the smile back into place. "Of course, it's your decision. I just wanted to make sure you'd considered all the options." She left shortly after. No groceries that day, no dinner, just the ask and her disappointment when I refused. That evening, my pocket recorder caught her phone call to Jason. I'd started carrying a small digital recorder everywhere, tucked in my shirt pocket. Amazing what people will say when they think you can't hear. "He won't budge on the house," Danielle said. "I tried the practical approach, the concern angle, everything. He shut me down." Jason's voice crackled through the speaker. "We need to be patient." "Patient? Jason, we've been doing this for 4 months. I'm tired of playing nursemaid to a stubborn old man who won't even appreciate what we're trying to do for him. The will says—" "I know what the will says. But what if he changes it? What if he decides to leave everything to some cat sanctuary or something? We need to lock this down." A pause. Then Jason, "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we bring in Kimberly. Get legal advice on how to protect our interests." Kimberly Hart, the lawyer Danielle had mentioned before. Someone in her social circle, probably just as mercenary. "I don't know if that's a good idea," Jason said. "Well, I'm doing it anyway. We have too much at stake to just sit around and hope." 2 days later, Kimberly Hart arrived at my house. She was in her mid-40s, blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, designer suit that probably cost $2,000. She smiled at me like I was a particularly simple child. "Mr. Peterson, I'm Kimberly Hart. Danielle asked me to stop by and chat with you about estate planning." I invited her in, offered coffee, which she declined. We sat in my living room, the hidden camera recording every word. "I understand you've been very generous in your planning for Jason and Danielle," she began. "That's wonderful. Family is so important." "Is it?" I asked. She blinked, thrown for a moment, then recovered. "Of course it is, and I'm sure you want to make sure your wishes are carried out properly. Sometimes older individuals need help navigating the complex world of estate law." Older individuals, like I was senile. "I've already worked with a notary," I said. "Leonard Morris. Everything's set up the way I want it." Her expression shifted slightly. "Leonard Morris. I know Leonard. Excellent attorney. But sometimes a second opinion can be helpful. For instance, there are ways to structure your assets to minimize tax burden, to ensure everything transfers smoothly." "I understand taxes just fine, Miss Hart," I said. "Spent 45 years working in the real world. I think I can handle my own affairs." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Kimberly's smile became brittle. "Of course, Mr. Peterson. I didn't mean to imply otherwise. I'm just offering my services if you need them. I'll keep that in mind." She left her card on the coffee table and saw herself out. I watched through the window as she walked to her Mercedes, pulled out her phone, made a call. My pocket recorder was still running. I stepped onto the porch, close enough that the sensitive microphone could pick up her voice through the open car window. "He's stubborn as a mule," she said to whoever was on the other end. "Won't consider any changes. Says he's already set everything up with Morris." A pause as she listened. I know. But the will exists. You saw it. As long as you two keep providing care, you're entitled to that money. He can't change it without a notary, and every notary in Charlotte knows me. If he tries anything, I'll hear about it." Another pause. Just keep doing what you're doing. He's 68. How much longer can he really hold out? She drove away. I stood on my porch, recorder in hand, and smiled. They were getting desperate, making mistakes, bringing in third parties, building a conspiracy that went beyond just Jason and Danielle. Perfect. I went inside, downloaded the recording, added it to my growing collection. Then I pulled out my phone and made a call of my own. Leonard, it's Ron Peterson. I need to schedule a meeting. There's something I want to set up. That evening, I sat in my study with my laptop, compiling footage. 25 clips total. The best, most damning moments from 4 months of recordings. Danielle calculating my life expectancy. Jason discussing the charade. Kimberly explaining how she'd block any changes to my will. I created a simple presentation, nothing fancy, just the videos, in chronological order, with dates and timestamps. Then I opened my contact list and started drafting emails. To the partners at Jason's dealership, to Danielle's boss at the hotel, to their neighbors in Matthews, to friends whose names I'd heard them mention over the years, not sent yet, just drafted, ready to go at a moment's notice. I also compiled a different document, a spreadsheet, 87 visits over 4 months. 0 visits in the 20 years before that. The math spoke for itself. The next morning I called Jason. Dad, how are you feeling? I've been thinking, I said, keeping my voice tired, slightly confused, about what Danielle said, about planning. Maybe you're right. Maybe I should have a family meeting, discuss my wishes with everyone present. Silence. Then, that's a great idea, Dad. Could you arrange it? Maybe get Kimberly there too, since she seemed interested. And I'd like Leonard Morris present, of course. My notary. Of course, of course. When were you thinking? I pretended to consider. How about mid-July? Gives me time to get everything organized. Perfect. We'll set it up. This is really wise of you, Dad. Wise? Sure. I hung up and looked at my calendar. July 15th. That would give me time to prepare the final pieces. Time for them to build up their expectations. Time for them to imagine $11 million finally within reach. And then I'd show them exactly what kind of fool they'd been playing. The days before the meeting crawled by like hours. I spent them preparing. Not frantically, but methodically. The way I used to prepare complex mechanical repairs at the shop. Every tool in its place. Every step planned out. In my study, I set up a small projector I'd bought online. Tested it 3 times to make sure it worked properly. Aimed it at the white wall opposite the fireplace. Loaded my presentation onto a laptop. Tested that too. 25 video clips, each one carefully selected. The greatest hits of Jason and Danielle's performance. I also invited Robert Gardner. He ran the Senior Citizens Support Foundation, a charity that helped isolated elderly people in Charlotte. We'd met at the chess club months ago, bonded over our shared love of the game. He had no idea why I was inviting him to a family meeting, but he'd agreed to come. Bring official foundation materials, I told him. I might be making a significant donation. The morning of July 15th arrived clear and warm. I woke early, made coffee, sat in my kitchen watching the sun rise over the neighborhood. This house on Oakwood Drive had been my home for 32 years. Martha and I had raised Jason here, built a life here. Soon it would belong to someone who actually needed it. I dressed carefully. Clean khakis, a button-down shirt, my good shoes. Wanted to look sharp. Wanted them to see that I was fully present, fully aware, fully in control. At 2 o'clock, Leonard Morris arrived. He let himself in with the spare key I'd given him the day before, carrying a leather briefcase. We shook hands. You ready for this, Ron? He asked. More than ready. I've got the paperwork. Everything's in order. And Robert? He'll be here at 2:30. I explained the situation. He understands his role. We set up in the living room. Leonard placed a folder on the coffee table. I double-checked the projector one last time. At 2:15, Jason and Danielle arrived together. They were dressed like they were heading to a corporate event. Jason in a suit, Danielle in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly utilities. Dad! Jason hugged me, tight, enthusiastic. The performance was in full swing. Thanks for doing this. It means so much that you're being proactive about planning. Danielle kissed my cheek. We're so proud of you, Ron. This is very mature. mature, like I was a child learning to tie my shoes. "Where should we sit?" Jason asked. "Anywhere you'd like." They chose the couch, sat close together, holding hands, a unified front. Kimberly Hart arrived at 2:20. She swept in with her briefcase and her expensive perfume, greeted Jason and Danielle warmly, shook my hand like we were old friends. "Mr. Peterson, so glad you reconsidered getting additional legal input." "Wouldn't miss it," I said. Robert Gardner was the last to arrive, right at 2:30. Late 50s, gray beard, kind eyes. He carried a folder with the foundation's logo on it. "Robert, thanks for coming," I said. "This is my son Jason, his wife Danielle, and their attorney Kimberly Hart. Everyone, this is Robert Gardner. He runs the Senior Citizens Support Foundation." I watched their faces, confusion flickering across Jason's features, Danielle's smile freezing in place. Why was a charity representative here? "Please, everyone sit," I said. They arranged themselves around the room, Jason and Danielle on the couch, still holding hands. Kimberly in the armchair, briefcase open on her lap. Leonard in the chair opposite her. Robert standing near the fireplace, folder in hand. I remained standing. Walked to the center of the room. Looked at each of them in turn. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "I asked you here today to discuss my estate, specifically to announce my final decisions regarding my assets, which total approximately $8,910,000, plus this house valued at $385,000. Jason and Danielle's eyes lit up. They squeezed each other's hands tighter. This was it. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. "Jason," I continued, looking directly at my son, "over the past 5 months, you've been an exemplary son. 87 visits, daily phone calls, constant concern for my well-being. It's been truly remarkable." He smiled. "We love you, Dad. We just wanted to make up for lost time." Lost time? Interesting phrase. I walked to the laptop, opened it. "Let me ask you something. Do you know why I started counting your visits?" His smile faltered. "Counting?" 87 visits in 5 months. Very precise number, isn't it? I clicked a button. The projector hummed to life. I counted because I wanted to compare it to something. The wall lit up with a simple spreadsheet. 2 columns. One labeled Visits, 2005 to 2024, 20 years. The other labeled Visits, January to June 2025, 5 months. The first column showed a 0. The second showed 87. 20 years, I said softly. Not one visit. Not for birthdays. Not for holidays. Not when Martha was dying. I looked at Jason. Not even for her funeral. Danielle started to speak, but I held up my hand. "Let me show you something else." I clicked to the next slide. The video started playing. Danielle's voice filled the room, crystal clear through the speakers. "I still can't believe he just told us the combination. Like he's completely senile." On screen, she and Jason were in my kitchen. The timestamp showed late February. Jason's face went white. Danielle's hand flew to her mouth. "What is this?" Kimberly stood up. "Security footage from my own home. Perfectly legal in North Carolina under Statute 15, A-287. I clicked to the next video. This one showed them discussing the will. $11 million. Just keep up the charade. How much longer could I possibly last? "You recorded us?" Danielle's voice was shrill. "In my own house? Absolutely." Another click. Another video. Danielle calculating my life expectancy. 10 years maximum. I played 5 clips, then 10. Watched their faces transform. Shock melting into horror, melting into rage. Jason found his voice. "Dad, you don't understand. We were just what? Just pretending to care about me so you could inherit money?" I turned to face him fully. "Let me tell you what I understand, Jason. I understand that you forgot about me for 20 years. I understand that you sent flowers to your mother's funeral instead of showing up. I understand that the moment you found out about my patents, you suddenly remembered you had a father. That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed. "You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about fair." I clicked to another video. This one showed Danielle on my couch talking to Kimberly. "We need to lock this down. Get legal advice on protecting our interests." Kimberly Hart stood up. "Mr. Peterson, I don't know what you think you're proving here, but—" "Sit down, Miss Hart." Leonard Morris's voice cut through the room like ice. "You're not running this meeting." She sat, barely. I played the final clip. Kimberly in her car on the phone. "Every notary in Charlotte knows me. If he tries anything, I'll hear about it." The room went silent. You could hear them breathing. "So," I said, turning off the projector, "let's talk about my will." Jason's hands were trembling. I could see it from across the room. Danielle had gone pale, her carefully applied makeup suddenly looking garish against her bloodless face. "Dad, please," Jason started. I held up my hand. "I'm not finished." I walked to where Leonard sat. He pulled a document from his briefcase, handed it to me. "This is my actual will. Properly notarized, properly filed, dated October 20th of last year, right after you sent that Christmas dinner invitation." I opened it, held it so they could see the official seal. "Leonard, would you like to explain the provisions?" Leonard stood. His voice was calm, professional. "Mr. Peterson's entire estate, including all financial assets totaling $8,910,000, plus the property at 2,847 Oakwood Drive valued at $385,000, has been bequeathed to the Senior Citizens Support Foundation." He gestured to Robert. "Mr. Gardner's organization will use these funds to help isolated elderly individuals who lack family support." Robert nodded solemnly. "We're honored by Mr. Peterson's trust." Danielle made a sound, not quite a scream, something between a gasp and a sob. "But the will—" Jason was on his feet now. "The one in the safe," it said. "The one in the safe was fake," I said flatly. "A test. I bought that notary stamp online for $23. Anyone who examined it closely would have seen it wasn't real." "But you didn't examine it closely, did you? You saw what you wanted to see." I watched understanding dawn on his face, watched it crack and crumble. "You tricked us," Danielle hissed. "I gave you a chance to prove me wrong, to show that maybe, just maybe, you actually cared about me as a human being and not as a source of money." I shook my head. "You failed spectacularly." Kimberly was gathering her things. "This meeting is over. Jason, Danielle, we should go—" "Actually, Miss Hart, you should stay for this part." I picked up my phone, opened my email. "I've compiled all 25 video clips into a single file, along with the documentation of 87 visits over 5 months compared to 0 visits over 20 years. Also included are the audio recordings of your conversation outside my house, explaining how you'd block any attempt I made to change my will." Her face went from pink to red to purple. "I've drafted emails to Jason's employers at the dealership, to Danielle's supervisors at the hotel, to your neighbors in Matthews, to everyone in your social circle whose name I've heard you mention. The emails are ready to send." I showed them the screen. "Just waiting for me to press this button." "You wouldn't," Danielle breathed. "Why wouldn't I? You spent 5 months performing for $11 million. You calculated how long I had left to live. You brought in a lawyer to help you manipulate me." I looked at each of them. "Why exactly should I protect your reputation?" Jason's voice broke. "Because I'm your son." The room fell silent. I walked over to him, looked into his eyes, saw Martha there for just a moment. Then it was gone. "No," I said quietly. "You stopped being my son the day you sent flowers instead of coming to your mother's funeral. You stopped being my son when you ignored me for 20 years. You stopped being my son when you saw me as nothing more than a bank account waiting to mature." Tears were streaming down his face now. Real ones, for once. "Dad, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We made mistakes, but—" "But what? But I should forgive you because you're family?" I shook my head. "You taught me something, Jason. Family isn't blood. Family is the people who show up, the people who care when it matters. You weren't family when Martha needed you. You're not family now." I pressed the button on my phone. "Email sent," I said. Danielle screamed, actually screamed. "You can't do this. You can't just destroy our lives." "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just sharing the truth. You destroyed your own lives the moment you decided to lie to me." Kimberly was already at the door. "We're leaving. Don't contact my clients again, Mr. Peterson. Any further communication will be considered harassment." "Oh, I won't be contacting them," I said. "We're done here. Forever." Jason was still standing there, tears running down his face, mouth opening and closing like he was drowning. Danielle grabbed his arm, pulled him toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back one last time. "Dad!" "You'll get exactly what you gave me for 20 years, I said. "Nothing." They left. The door slammed behind them. Their footsteps echoed on the porch, then faded. I stood in my living room, surrounded by the people who mattered. Leonard, who'd helped me craft this justice. Robert, who'd used my money to help people who actually needed it. "Well," Leonard said after a moment, "that went approximately as expected." I poured myself a whiskey. The good stuff, Glenfiddich, 18. Raised my glass. "To Martha," I said, who deserved better than what she got. "To Martha," the others echoed. I sat down in my chair, the same one where I'd torn up their sympathy card all those months ago, the same one where I'd decided to start living for myself. My phone was already buzzing, probably Jason's colleagues, probably Danielle's friends. The videos were spreading. By tomorrow, everyone in their social circle would know what they'd done, what they'd tried to do. I didn't feel cruel, didn't feel victorious exactly, just satisfied, like I'd fixed something that had been broken for a long time. Robert cleared his throat. "Mr. Peterson, I want you to know that your donation will change lives. There are so many people out there who are alone, who need help, who have nowhere to turn." "I know," I said. I was almost one of them. Leonard gathered his papers. "I'll file everything with the court next week, make it official and public record." "Thank you, Leonard." After they left, I sat alone in the quiet house, picked up the photograph from the mantel. Jason's wedding day, me standing there proud and hopeful. I put it face down in a drawer. That version of us didn't exist anymore. Maybe it never had. Instead, I walked to my workshop. The restored antique clock was ticking perfectly on the shelf, precise, reliable, every gear doing exactly what it was supposed to do. I had enough money to live comfortably for whatever time I had left. I had my house, my workshop, my chess club, my freedom, and I had justice. Not revenge, justice. There's a difference. Revenge is about making someone suffer. Justice is about making sure the truth is known. I picked up another clock from my collection, a 1905 pocket watch that needed work, sat down at my bench, pulled out my tools, and got to work. Outside, the sun was setting over Charlotte. The summer evening was warm, peaceful. Somewhere out there, Jason and Danielle were dealing with the consequences of their choices. And me? I was finally, truly, living for myself. The clock ticked, the gears turned, everything worked exactly as it should. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.